Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Every touch is a step forward. By Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. And by Real Good Foods. Real food you feel good about eating.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, Ask the D-Moms. We're talking about the holidays. Thanksgiving is just around the corner, and it can be very stressful, not just because of well-meaning family members, but for many people who are facing their first Thanksgiving with type 1.
Everything feels so new and everything feels so scary, but just take it on, push through it, and whatever happens, happens. Your child's not going to die from stuffing overdose. And then the second year, it's a little more familiar. And then the third year, you're like, you don't even think about it.
Moira McCarthy and I will answer your questions about food, about drinks, and about what to say to family members who, after a lot of time, still may not get it. In Tell Me Something Good, a policy change in the U.S. means people with type 1 can become commercial pilots. We'll take a look at that. And a bit about World Diabetes Day. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of Diabetes Connections. I'm your host, Stacey Sims. We aim to educate and inspire about type 1 diabetes by sharing stories of connection. A big hello to the new people joining from Macy's Believers. I just attended their very first gala down in Florida. This is a great benefit. They are a group that helps families go to the Friends for Life conference that happens every summer. And that conference can be life-changing. It's no small feat to send multiple families. And so thank you, Macy's Believers, for stepping up and taking that task on. I was thrilled to be there. Thank you so much for having me. Always great to meet listeners in person, and hopefully some new listeners are joining in now after that event. I also want to say a quick thank you to so many of you who have reached out about the world's worst diabetes mom. The book came out at the beginning of November. The response has been fantastic. The reviews have been great. I mean, I really couldn't ask for more. And I'm getting ready. You might see on social media, I'm going to be asking our friends who don't have diabetes in their families to share a post that I'll be putting out on the public page and on my private page, because we don't know who they know, right, who could be helped. And I'm really hoping that my friends who aren't touched by type 1 can share this. I should share a story. I have a friend who's a pediatrician up in New York. I went to high school with him, and we've stayed friends on Facebook, as you do. And he, without telling me, he ordered the book, he read the book, and he posted about it because he diagnoses kids all the time with type 1, and he wanted to know more about it. It's hard for me to imagine being the healthcare provider who has to say, your life is about to change. But he does that all the time. So thanks, Matt. I really appreciate you buying the book and learning more about type 1. And thank you for being the voice that saves that family. I mean, you really do. It's terrible news, but gosh, you got to get that news in time because it can be devastating. So thank you, Matt. Isn't that just amazing on Facebook? I mean, it's one of the few things that's good about it still, right? Is connecting to people that you knew and you just lost touch with. And it's so nice sometimes when they come back in. That's good stuff. Okay, we're going to talk about Thanksgiving in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. And we have been using the Dexcom G6 since it came out last summer, a year and a half ago, last May. It's amazing. The Dexcom G6 is now FDA permitted for no finger sticks for calibration and diabetes treatment decisions. You do that 2-hour warm up and the number just pops up. I'm still getting used to that. It kind of seems like magic to me after all those years of calibrating and needing to calibrate after the warm up. You know, we've been using Dexcom. It'll be 6 years in December, and it just keeps getting better. The G6 has longer sensor wear, now 10 days, and the new sensor applicator is so easy to use. Benny just does it all himself. Of course, we still love the alerts and the alarms, and we can set them how we want. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions. To learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. All this year, Moira McCarthy and I have been answering your questions. Ask the D-Mom. I started this in January. It was an idea that I had after Moira and I were together in person at a Diabetes Mine event a year ago. We were out in California for that event, and that's where we got the idea for this. And Moira, of course, is a very well-known diabetes blogger, author. I consider her my mentor. She was one of the first people I found in the community talking about parenting. Her books are amazing, and she is a very accomplished reporter and travel writer, not in diabetes, and a skiing expert and an award-winning ski writer. And I know most of you know Moira, but just in case there's some new people, this is why I'm talking to this lady about all this parenting stuff. She is my go-to, and I hope she's become yours if you haven't heard about her before the podcast. All right, well, we got together to answer your questions about the holidays.
Moira, hi. So great to talk to you. How you been?
I am great. How about you?
I'm doing fine. I think I have a little cold finally, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it sounds. But listen, we are almost to Thanksgiving and then, all of the holiday madness that can follow. So we got some great questions about that. But before we jump in, as we're taping this week, you posted that it is Lauren's diaversary. So I guess I should first say congratulations, or
I know what you'd say.
Way to go.
Yay, Yay diabetes.
But seriously, I wanted to bring it up because you posted a wonderful commentary on your thoughts about that day. And I actually reposted it in my local Charlotte group. And I said, this is a manifesto. Read this. Oh. But I really think it was more than look how well we're doing, or isn't my kid great, or, all that wonderful stuff that we all like. What made you write about what you did well, I'll let you tell it more.
Yeah, that's a good question. It weighs on my mind often how much moms struggle and suffer after their child is diagnosed. And what I talk about in the post was the choices that we made along the way. And it's way, way, way oversimplifying to say we choose to be positive and we choose to live well, because a lot of work goes into that. And it breaks my heart when I meet families and moms and dads who have been unable to sort of push past the angst and the fear and the sadness.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, because, when you're first diagnosed, and I know you went through this, you've talked about it very publicly, you think initially my whole life needs to change. My life as the mom. I need to quit work. I need to stay home. I need to never sleep again. And you and I were so lucky to have guidance early on that, no, you don't have to. So I think it makes a big difference who you kind of come into contact first, right? Because your endo kind of set you up early on.
100%. And then it took me a year before I met any other parents of children with diabetes, because there was no internet then.
Right.
JDRF was JDF and didn't do support groups. So it was difficult. But I found a group of moms who were a little bit more ahead of it than me, and who I liked what I heard from them, and I liked the way that they were living, and I liked the way they were raising their children. And those people, Nancy Jones, Claire Logan, so many of them, Cheryl Franklin, they guided me too. And I was super lucky to come across them. But I want to be clear in something. It might even be harder work to be more positive and make choices to live well, but it's unbelievably worthwhile to me. When I look at Lauren, 22 years, my kid has had type 1 diabetes for 22 years. That's insane. And yet when I look back on her life, I don't think about diabetes first.
Yeah. Wow.
I think about all the great things she's done and all the fun we've had as a family, and the times when I wanted to rip my hair out because she drove me crazy as a teenager, period. And I think that the guidance that I got, and I'll give myself a little credit, my determination to want to live positively and well and guide my daughter to, was the right choice. And everybody's different and everybody's situation is unique, and I can't lay what I did over everyone's life. But I can say that if you relate to something that says, or someone saying to you like, I'm never going to be the same again, and life is so hard, and I have to cry all the time, find a way to move past that, because you can.
Oh, absolutely. And we could go and talk through a lot of the different things that speak to us. I mean, there's a meme for everything, right? And there's a post for everybody. I saw something recently, and I didn't comment on it. All respect to people who live how they live. We're not saying don't do this, don't do that. It's just looking at a different perspective. And it was some kind of headline like, I don't care if I ever sleep again if it keeps you alive. And I thought, and it was about diabetes. It was about type 1 diabetes. And I thought, well, sure. If I had to make the choice of keeping my children alive, either one of them, sure. But that's not the choice. That's not the headline. That's not the headline to my life with type 1 diabetes. And it's choices like that really make all the difference. How do you frame this? As you're listening, how do you think about it? And Moira and I are kind of rose-colored glasses people, but we're not dummies. We're not,
right.
We're not ignoring everything bad.
I'm not delusional, and it has not been easy. But I just had coffee yesterday with 4 adults with type 1 who are friends of mine. And every time I talk to adults who grew up with type 1 diabetes, and I talk about making choices like not saying things like that and trying not to frame it that way and educating myself past fear, they say that is the right thing to do and that the other way would have destroyed them and destroyed their relationship with their parents. And I know there's the people who say, well, I'd rather not have a relationship and have them alive, but you can have both.
Right.
You can have both.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel really good about where we are as a family, where Lauren is as an adult, and where I am as my own human being too. And one of the lines that I said that I felt really good about is, we learned to not give diabetes any more power than it deserves. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great lesson. It's a great lesson. And one that you have to learn as you go, and you need help. You need to look to those other moms like you found and those other people living with type 1 like, we've been lucky enough to meet. I love that. Okay, let's talk about the holidays, because we did get a whole bunch of questions. And, this has its own ups and downs and way of looking at it. This was an interesting question. I have some specific questions, which I love. It's always fun to kind of see what people are thinking. So Sarah wrote, this is our first holiday season as a T1D family. I have a 2-year-old son. He was diagnosed in August. Do you serve regular drinks at family gatherings? I plan on serving only water, diet drinks, and drinks that our T1D can drink. However, are there other families that serve the diet drinks only, and are other family members bothered by it, or are they on board? And we actually this was in my local group, and we had a whole discussion about it. But I'm curious, what did you do for that first year? Because sugary drinks is something that really threw us. I didn't have a lot of food rules before or after diabetes, but no sugary drinks was a big one for me even before diabetes.
Yeah. So I'm kind of weird in that I've always been a water drinker, and there's probably never been regular soda in my refrigerator. Maybe some ginger ale for a Jameson's and ginger once or something, but I never had that. But that said, when I think about when I had birthday parties or hosted Thanksgiving or whatever, I always had everything that anybody would want. I don't feel like a house has to be a diabetes only house. I think that the world is big and our kids are going to grow up going all different places where there's all different stuff, and they just have to know that this is what they can have and this is what they need insulin when they have.
Yeah.
So I probably would say do exactly what you did the year before and have that stuff for Thanksgiving.
Right back to me and Moira, and I'll give my take on that question in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Handwriting your blood glucose levels is the ultimate throwback. The One Touch Vario Flex Meter seamlessly syncs with the free One Touch Reveal mobile app to create your dynamic electronic logbook. And when you choose the One Touch Reveal mobile app, you'll be joining thousands of other people living with diabetes. In fact, as of this past October, One Touch Reveal was the #1 downloaded diabetes management app in the US, Canada, France, and the UK. To upgrade today to the One Touch Vario Flex Meter and One Touch Reveal mobile app, visit diabetes-connections.com and click on the One Touch logo. Now back to Ask the D-Moms, and I'm answering the question that was posed about changing up drinks like soda and sweet stuff for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, the way I answered her too in the group was, when I look at things like this, it's before and after diabetes, right? What did you do before if you were hosting? And we were very similar. We only had no sugar drinks to begin with because that's how my family rolls. So we did water or iced tea or whatever. But I was definitely not above lying to my children throughout their childhood. I told them all the time that if I was drinking a Diet Coke, it was coffee, because they knew coffee was gross. You know, I think Leah was probably 6 before I fessed up to anything I was drinking, because she thought I drank coffee all day long. I was probably drinking wine and telling her it was coffee. I don't even remember. But I lied to them all day long because, you know, kids, I'm a terrible parent. But a 2-year-old certainly doesn't need a soda, a diet soda or not. You're telling a 2-year-old no all the time for things that they can and cannot have. But what I also said was, and she had mentioned they're really trying to eat healthy as a family. They're all making changes as a family because they're not restricting really, but they realized they were having a lot of extra things they didn't need, like regular sodas. So they made a big change. And my comment was, well, you know, if you're doing that, but everybody knows Uncle Jimmy always has a Dr. Pepper. Like, that's all Uncle Jimmy wants to drink. And you've always had it for him. And then he shows up and you're like, here's your water. As a host, it's kind of rude. Right? So set it up how you know to make your guests happy. If it's a ahead of time thing, if it's your first year, you know, you can get away with a lot. Everybody's happy and everybody's nervous. Everybody wants to help usually. But Uncle Jimmy probably wants his Dr. Pepper.
Right. And then if you look at that, you could also say, well, I'm not going to have stuffing on the table. And I'm sorry, it's not Thanksgiving without stuffing on the table. Right? I mean, that's like a big glob of carbs right there. But that's part of Thanksgiving for me. And so I would say as little change as possible. That's what I would say.
And that leads us into another question, which was, how do I deal with the grazing that comes with a holiday meal? Because even if you don't have an all-day eating fest, which frankly we do, a Thanksgiving meal can last an hour. Or even 2, even if kids are coming to the table and running back. I mean, as adults, we like to sit there and kind of pick on things for a long time. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how do you graze successfully? And again, I think your definition of successfully may vary.
Right. So, well, first of all, the first Thanksgiving, Lauren was diagnosed, as we know, in October, because it's her anniversary. Woohoo! The first Thanksgiving, she was on NPH and regular because Lantus didn't exist, Humalog didn't exist, Novolog didn't exist, and she had to eat. Everyone with diabetes on the planet ate at exactly the same time every day and ate the same amount of food. It was crazy. And so I told my in-laws that this is the time we needed to eat, and if they didn't mind. And of course we got there and like everything wasn't the way it was supposed to be. And I was like, oh my God, the world's going to end. And I actually called the CDE on Thanksgiving and said, you know, I'm at my in-laws' house and here's what's going on. And she said, listen, just give her the regular that you would give her for that covers food, and just let her eat what she wants. And then at 6:00 tonight, when it's all over, check her again and do a correction and go on to the next day. That's it. And
did she make it?
What do you mean?
Did she make it through Thanksgiving? Did she faint? Did she pass out? Did she eat anything? Was she okay? I'm being sarcastic.
You know, I thought the world was going to end. And as always, it was a good lesson because there's always a solution. And the thing about grazing and Thanksgiving, my advice would be, don't try for a flat line that day. It's just going to ruin your holiday. It's only one day. You know, you don't want to be HI, as I call it, overly friendly meter syndrome. It keeps saying hi. But, you know, just do a moderate job and have fun and enjoy the holiday, and the next day go back to trying to stay in range.
I think it's great advice because, you know, some kids, my advice would be for the buffet or for the, you know, the long meals is give insulin if you can. You know, take a guess. All right, what's my kid going to eat? 25 carbs, 125 carbs, whatever you think your kid's going to eat. give a dose, maybe not the whole thing, but 20 minutes before the meal, 10 minutes before the meal. And then when they're finished, all right, what'd you do? What'd you eat? Kind of fix it, figure out what you missed in the math, and then, correct as needed a couple hours later. But what's funny about Thanksgiving is there are kids like my son who will fill their plate with everything, regardless of whether they've ever seen it before, right? If we're at somebody else's house, sweet potatoes with, noodles on top, or, as opposed to the marshmallows we've always seen, or, a ham as opposed to a turkey or lasagna or whatever. Benny would try everything. As opposed to Leah, and we were that meme. We joked around all the time, like, I'm glad I cooked for 3 days so my kid could eat a bite of turkey and half a roll.
Uh-huh.
Right? Every kid is so different. And the last thing you want to do is, in pursuit of the straight line, predose your child who would really rather run around with their cousins than sit down and eat the healthy, wonderful, well-balanced meal you wish they would eat. And then you're stuck shoveling cranberry sauce and pumpkin pie down their throat.
Right.
Right. And then the lesson there is, well, if I don't eat, I get what I want. I get the sugary stuff. It's really tough. And so make it easy on yourself.
Yeah.
And, we're not saying, those 350 spikes, it's fun. Go with it. Absolutely not. But aiming for a straight line of 95 on a holiday puts so much pressure on you, you will not enjoy. And I want to go back for a second more. I was kind of thinking as you were talking, it was funny when you mentioned calling your CDE on Thanksgiving. And I wouldn't call what you did a mistake, right, because it was circumstances. But that's what I talk about. And I promise I'm not trying to do a promo for the book, but that's what I talk about all the time. Something got messed up. You figured it out with help from your healthcare team.
Right. You
went forward. She was fine. It was fine. And you needed that mistake to feel better next time. It's so important. When Moira and I, at the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about feeling positive and, being okay. You have to go through those fearful times to get there. Please don't make the mistake of thinking that our kids were diagnosed and we walked out of the hospital. We got this, whistling and,
Uh-huh. And, that's part of pushing past your fear and a holiday. And I think for the people who ask the questions who's the first year is the hardest year because everything feels so new and everything feels so scary. But just take it on, push through it, and whatever happens, happens. Your child's not going to die from stuffing overdose. And then the second year, it's a little more familiar. And then the third year, you're like, you don't even think about it. And so you've got to just push yourself through these times. And I think that the more that you can even mess up a little sometimes,
right,
and then see that it's okay, the better you're going to feel. And that does not mean you should just say, oh, great, I can just mess up all the time. What it means is that you begin to understand that there's not a crisis where you see a crisis.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like a crisis. And you've got all these people around you, too, who are either wanting to help and worried about you, or you may feel, depending on your family, judging you, right? Well, you can't even do this. I don't know whether they'll really be thinking that or not, but sometimes I have such a supportive family. And my thing isn't that I worry that they're judging me. I worry that if it's not perfect, they're going to worry more. So sometimes I feel the pressure of, oh my God, I got to get this right because otherwise my mom is going to be calling me for the next week, making sure Benny's okay.
Oh, that's
Other
so
people
sweet,
may,
though.
oh yeah, but turn it around. Others may be, she's the best, but others may be thinking, I got to get this right, or my mom's going to judge me behind my back.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to get a call in 2 days. You don't know what you're doing, because unfortunately that happens.
I have a super good story about trying too hard the first year of making holidays work that I just thought of. So when Lauren was diagnosed 22 years ago, even sugar-free candy and stuff was hard to find. And around Thanksgiving, I started thinking about candy canes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to find sugar-free candy canes. I could not find them anywhere. I called candy stores all over the country to see if they had them, to have them shipped. I drove up to this candy factory north of Boston to see. I went everywhere. I did everything. I asked all my friends. I could not find sugar-free candy canes. And then Christmas came and I said to Lauren, I'm so sorry, Lauren. I looked everywhere for sugar-free candy canes. She's like, Mom, I hate mint. Oh, yeah, I forgot that.
Oh,
right?
my gosh. Right, because you were so consumed with making it perfect. She must have the candy canes.
It served as a symbolism for me going forward, I tried to not make everything about a stupid sugar-free candy cane that A, she doesn't even like mint, and B, you'll learn further on that sugar-free candy isn't that great. But I just think it just makes me laugh. I just remembered that.
That's fabulous.
Anyway.
So we got another question, and this is a really tough one, I think. This is from a mom who says, when he won't eat any more meat or free foods, how do you tell him he can't have any more and everybody else is still eating? My son is 1, by the way. Oh. And I went on to ask her, well, tell me more, because why are you limiting a 1-year-old, right? A 1-year-old doesn't know when to stop eating. They're not eating out of boredom. They're hungry. Feed them. And she said their endo has them on a strict 30 carbs per meal limit. I mean, I got in touch with her and I said, you've got to talk to your endo, because a 1-year-old, I get it, they're trying to figure out the dosing, but come on, ask them when they're transitioning you from that. I don't have a lot of experience. My son was 23 months old and they immediately let us eat what he wanted and dose for that. You have more experience with that. Any advice or?
Yeah, I think she should not delay having another conversation with the child's medical team, because that seems really difficult. So back when Lauren was diagnosed with MPH and regular, my friend Claire Logan, the one I just mentioned, her daughter was diagnosed just before her 2nd birthday. And Claire had to weigh and measure. You had to give a meal. You didn't carb count then. You had like exchanges. Oh, yeah, and then you would give the insulin a half an hour before. And so she would make this perfect meal and she would give the insulin a half hour before, and she would sit her daughter down at the table and her daughter would go, me no hungry. And Claire would whip the refrigerator open and just be like, anything, correct. Take anything you want out of here. Yeah. Don't care what it is. And so when these more rapid acting insulins came out, that all changed for small kids. And so my hope would be that maybe the medical team can find a different way to figure out the ratios and stuff. I mean, I don't want to question her medical team because I don't know what the exact situation is with that child, but that sounds very unusual to me.
I would agree. And I'll say, again, we don't know what else is going on. We're not medical professionals. But as you listen, there are remote options. I think it would be tough for a 1-year-old, but there are some certified diabetes educators, things like integrative diabetes services with Gary Shiner, that they could do a consult, things like that. Because, in some areas, there's one endo within 3 hours.
Right.
Or even people wind up seeing their general practitioners who aren't necessarily qualified. So if that's something that you really want to pursue, I'll put some links in the show notes and some other information on that, just to maybe get a second opinion. And then, Moira, for the holidays, I got a question in my local group. This was a little sarcastic, but the question was, how do you respond to family members who continue to ask you dumb questions year after year? Like, what do you say about, and I think this happens all the time, right? Someone will say, I want to bring my sweet potatoes with marshmallows, but I'm going to make it sugar-free. It's like, it's sweet potatoes with marshmallows. Really? You're going to make it sugar-free?
Right.
Or I'm making a special cherry pie that's low in sugar just for you, and it probably tastes disgusting. It's going to send you to the bathroom for the rest of the day. But how do you respond to, I'm going to say, well-meaning but uneducated remarks?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person and the situation. If it's your mother-in-law and she does it every year, you got to just smile and say thank you and put it aside and cut a piece of the icky cherry pie and throw it in the trash when she's not looking and tell her it's delicious, because they mean well. But you also have an opportunity to say, that is amazing, but I don't know if you know that we have insulin now that can actually treat it so they can eat the regular cherry pie, and maybe they'll learn from it. But, I got an unnamed relative who does not understand that an insulin pump is not a cure. And every time I have to say, no, she actually still has diabetes and the pump didn't take it away. But that's the way it goes, and I think sometimes we tend to take it all a little too seriously. And at the end of the day, if someone's saying something not in a mean way or doing something to be kind, you just got to let them be kind. We do that all the time, right? How many times have you opened a gift from someone that you hate and you just say, this is wonderful? right? This is the best thing I've ever gotten.
Exactly. It's so funny. I found myself saying for years, and I would do this whether it was, my aunt or this happened a lot at baseball for some reason. For years, I guess it was that elementary school and early middle school age when you still talk to other parents at practices. But they would always want to know, what's he eating or what's going on or can he eat that? And I would always say, oh, it's amazing. I used to think like you did, but that's really old school thinking. It's amazing what's changed with diabetes in the last 15 years. My medical team says, and I would just make stuff up. My medical team says that, he can eat anything he wants and it's fine. And I mean, that's not making it up, but I would really use the medical people. My doctor told me to stop thinking old school or whatever. And it would help to kind of lean on them and kind of, I used to not know anything either. But, sometimes I just want to let loose, right? You asked me that last week. But I think it's like you said, you kind of have to be polite like you are in everything else in life.
Yeah, it would be fun to just be able to just punch them. Just a short punch, just a little stun, no injury. But
I like a little stun gun. Like,
yeah. That might be a good idea. I wonder if insurance would cover the stun gun. Huh.
It's funny, as Benny's gotten older, one of the things that came up with the cousins when we're together sporadically here and there was the older cousins were all joking about drinking. They were kind of, and I mean older, my older cousins in our family are like mid-teens, so 15, 16, that kind of thing. And they're taking the wine glasses that are set that are full of water for them. Oh, we're drinking, or whatever, and goofing around. And then somebody did ask Benny, can you drink with diabetes? And he was the first time they asked, he was about 11 or 12, and we hadn't really talked about it much. But that was a really interesting conversation because I was not ready to have it in front of my entire family.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird thing to ask an 11-year-old too, but hey.
Right. Well, that's his cousins, they were like, hey, who knows what they're talking about at the end of the table or at the kids' table there. But we talked about it a little bit, and I just said, hey, with diabetes, you figure it out. We figured out everything else so far. We will figure it out. Please pass the potatoes, end of discussion.
Right.
Oh, God, my crazy family. Okay, one last question, which is not really something that you or I have a lot of experience with, but I do want to acknowledge it. Trish wrote in my local group, and it was more of a commentary to the other people chiming in, which was, look, Thanksgiving is fine. Diabetes is actually okay. It's celiac that throws us. It's such a difficult condition. Stacey, can you please talk about dealing with celiac? And she didn't even say what to do, but just to acknowledge how difficult it is. We don't have that issue, but on any holiday, sure, there's lots of food you can eat that doesn't have gluten in it, but boy, it really is tough.
Oh my gosh. Lauren does not have celiac, but she does have a lot of friends with diabetes who have celiac. And she has always said that would be super difficult for me. And I think that, even like cross-contamination when you go to your aunt's cooking Thanksgiving dinner, how do you even control that? I just think it's the hardest thing. And all I can say is more power to the people who are dealing with diabetes and celiac, because that's just so hard. And, we talk a lot in the diabetes world about not developing food issues for our kids. How do you work around that with celiac too? I have so much respect for parents raising kids with both.
I do too. I think I need to do a show on that. Maybe Trish will talk to me or some other families. There's so many touched with celiac who, talking about strategies, because it's one thing to, like, we just went through this whole thing saying, well, it doesn't really matter what you're drinking or, but to have to call your aunt and say, we cannot have this thing, or, depending on cross-contamination, please do not even have it around, or always hosting, the pressure to always do it at your house, the pressure that your kid is under, when other people are having pizza or partying and having to be singled out. So I think we'll do more on that because, certainly I'm not an expert, and I'd really like to give that the time and the information that it's due. So Trish, thanks for bringing it up, and I'm sorry that we don't have more to say other than we really do have a lot of respect for what you're going through.
Seriously, it's just unbelievable, and they do it. Those families figure it out, and they do it. So,
oh heck yeah,
salute them.
All right, so before we wrap it up, what do you do for Thanksgiving? Do you host? Do you go somewhere? What's your tradition?
So Thanksgiving was my favorite holiday growing up. We went to my grandfather's house. My grandfather was a very famous man in Massachusetts and in the world. And Thanksgiving was huge and all my cousins went and it was just the best day. But once we all got married and have kids, there was just too many of us, and of course my grandfather has passed away. So I had been hosting for years and I loved it, but my older daughter has taken control. I am not allowed anymore. It is all her and she does it. We just talked about it the day before yesterday because she has 2 little babies and I'm like, do you want me to do it? Nope, she does it now. So I think my turkey was really good. I don't think that's it. So now I don't really do much. It's strange. I make things and bring it. I'm the guest now instead of the host, but it's still, I think I love Thanksgiving because it really is just about being together.
Yeah.
I have so many good memories of it growing up. And when my husband and I got engaged, I was like, just so you know, Thanksgiving is at Grandpa's house, period. And break up with me if you don't agree. So that's what I do. And I also have a new tradition, which is at 7:30 in the morning on Thanksgiving, I run a 5K.
What?
So yeah, it's the turkey trot.
Oh, that's
7:30 in the morning.
fantastic.
Lauren's going to run it with me this year. So run is a relative term. I slog.
Yeah, but wow.
But
that's wonderful. Oh, good for you.
Yeah. And it starts at Plymouth Rock and it ends at Plymouth Rock. So it really is the Thanksgiving run.
That's amazing. When I moved away and started working, I was working in television news. And as low man on the totem pole, I never got the day off. Right? So I was always working.
Too.
Yeah, right? So I was always working. You were a reporter. It was like, you got to show up and do your stuff.
Yeah.
So I told my family, like, look, let's get together. Come to me. And the first Thanksgiving I hosted, I had a table that only had 2 chairs. I honestly don't know where we all sat. I think we probably just sat around my apartment on pillows or something. But they always came to my house. And over the years, it's just been fabulous because when I was in radio, I finally had seniority enough that I could get the holiday off. But a lot of times I would work on Friday. We would do some kind of Black Friday special, or we'd be at a mall at 7:00 in the morning or whatever. Ugh. But even when I left, everybody keeps coming to me. So I love hosting it. And I am the worst because my husband cooks. So I don't even do anything. I'm just like, la, 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 I'm the hostess. I walk around. We sometimes when the kids were little would do fun things. We would make insane cupcakes. That was our trademark for a while, talking about type 1 diabetes. I'll post these in the group because one year we made turkey cupcakes and they were hysterical. But we just made, I would try to organize fun things to do. Like this year we have reservations at an escape room and things like that. So I don't cook. I do clean, but I'm more like your hostess of activities.
I love to cook Thanksgiving dinner. I miss it.
Oh.
But my daughter is like Martha Stewart. I mean, it's perfect. So I've handed it off. But excellent. Yeah.
You're traveling, right? In November, are you going to Kansas City or?
November 16th, which is a Saturday, I will be speaking at the Type 1 Nation in Kansas City.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about research, volunteering, and what being a volunteer has done for our family and for the world.
Can I tell you something you may know? But, your research talk that I attended your research talk once in South Carolina. I don't even remember what year this was, several years ago. It was the first time that and this sounds very silly as you listen, but if you've ever seen Moore speak, it makes sense. It was the first time that the research from JDRF funding really crystallized for me. Because I think, JDRF has been around for so long and frankly gets slammed so much lately that we forget that, CGMs, insurance coverage for CGMs, insulin pumps, all of these things that we just think came from private industry did not.
Yeah.
And wouldn't happen without JDRF funding. And I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but when you spoke, it brought it home to me in a real and tangible way that I guess like a PowerPoint presentation that I had seen before didn't. So yay for you for continuing to do that. And people in Kansas City, you are in for a treat because it's going to be great. You really, I know we're friends now and blah, 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 but that was significant for me.
Oh, thanks for saying that. I have to battle a little bit, to be honest, but because I do it my own way, I get the facts right and I know my research and stuff. I just have my own been on it because I feel like I like to say I'm not a PhD, I'm an MOM, and I'm going to talk about research as a mom, not as a PhD, because that's who I am. So it's fun. And it makes me feel good when I talk about it because it reminds me of the change that I've seen and the change that we've been part of, and that there will be more change. Right?
Love it. Yes. Maybe that's why it spoke to me, because I'm definitely not a PhD.
That's why we're friends.
Oh, I love it. All right. Send me pictures or post in the Facebook group if you don't mind I want to see the Martha Stewart Thanksgiving, but I especially want to see those two little girls on Thanksgiving. Post your beautiful pictures of your granddaughters, please.
Oh, you know how I don't like sharing them. I will.
Excellent. All right. Have a great holiday.
You too. Happy Thanksgiving.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
If you're not in the Facebook group, definitely join, because we are posting the pictures in that group. I'll post the cupcakes, and hopefully Moira will post her granddaughters. Oh my gosh, they are so cute. And it is Diabetes Connections, the group. And I just want to say one more thing. You know, I kind of joked around a little bit about that conversation about alcohol. I skimmed over it a bit, but I just want to go back and revisit. I'm going to link up a couple of articles in the show notes, because I have conversations with my kids a little earlier than most. I mean, we did the birds and the bees talk when they were 7, because my kids go away to summer camp. But I do think there's a lot to be said for having these conversations very early on, not in, full detail, but, age appropriate. And I think it's the same with alcohol and type 1. I had a discussion in my local group recently, and a couple of parents had absolutely no idea that there is an issue. And very, very briefly, very layperson, non-scientific, what happens is, if you're not familiar, is that your liver is responsible for not only pushing out, I guess it's called basal glucose, a little bit of glucose here and there, just like a pancreas in a person that has a functioning pancreas pushes out a little bit of insulin here and there. The liver also is responsible for the emergency glucose, right? That glucose dump when you're injected with glucagon. It's a signal for the liver to dump its stores of glucose and raise an emergency low blood sugar level. But when you're drinking alcohol, the liver actually prioritizes metabolizing the alcohol first before releasing any glucose, emergency or not, is my understanding. So it's very important to understand your body when you're drinking alcohol if you have type 1, and for the people around you to understand that if you pass out, it may not be because you're drunk. It may be because you're low. Again, very quick, very simple, very oversimplified, but I'm going to link up a lot more because it's really important. You can tell your kid don't drink, or you as a person with type 1 can say, I'm never going to drink. Fine. But if you think your child might, and I know my children probably will, I'm trying to be realistic here. These are conversations that can save lives. Let's not beat around the bush. So I really just skimmed over it. I know I was very brief on it during our interview, but I do take it very seriously, and we really all need to. All right, but more information in the show notes. I say this all the time, but if you're not familiar, if you're listening to a podcast app, show notes are where it says more here or click for details, but you can always go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the episode, and then underneath it should have all of the details about it. Time for Tell Me Something Good. Tell Me Something Good is brought to you by Real Good Foods. We first heard about Real Good Foods because of the pizza. This was their signature dish for a while, and it's still a staple in my house. The amazing pizza, low carb, high in protein. Benny loves it. Then they came out with the cauliflower crust pizza, delicious. Breakfast sandwiches, poppers, stuffed chicken, Italian dishes. I mean, they just keep coming up with great stuff. And what's fun is you can go to their website and they have all sorts of different ways to use their food in fun recipes. So you can kind of change things up and use what they're giving you and make it fun and different. And all this month for Diabetes Awareness Month, they are going blue. You can use the hashtag BeyondRealGood and check them out and see what they're doing. They say to spread awareness of diabetes during November. You can find out more where to buy them, discounts, all sorts of fun stuff. Just go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Real Good Foods logo. As many of you know, many of you experienced this, years ago, people with diabetes told they couldn't do a lot of things. A lot of people who were diagnosed with type 1 a generation ago, I mean, really not that long ago, were told no. Nicole Johnson, Miss America 1999, tells the story of how her doctors told her no so often. You cannot go back to college. No, you can't be a reporter. No, you can't be in pageants. I mean, she really had to give all of that up, she thought. And finally, she, with incredible strength of will, said no to her doctors and moved ahead and did all of that. And I bring that up because one of the most common no's that people with type 1 get when they're dreaming big is that you can't fly. You can't be a pilot. Oh, you can be a private pilot, but you can't be a commercial pilot. Well, just recently, the FAA, this is the United States, will move forward with a new protocol that will permit pilots who have insulin-treated diabetes to fly commercial airlines. Prospective pilots with type 1 will be able to apply for first or second class medical certificates. And that's one of the requirements, I guess, for a commercial pilot license. I'm reading from an article here, but it seems that while people with type 1 or insulin-treated diabetes have been allowed to fly on a private basis since 1996, this has been a restriction, right? No commercial flights. Canada and the UK have moved forward, provided that they are accompanied by a second crew member. People with type 1 can fly planes. And, you know, this is about advocacy from pilots groups. The ADA pushed hard for this, and it's a lot about continuous glucose monitors and better insulin formulations. So next time somebody's talking about Walmart insulin, you know, all right. But anyway, I did see some interesting comments on diabetes social media. You know, a couple of people with type 1 said this is a huge mistake. They feel like it's too dangerous. But this is not something that you're just going to be able to sign up for and jump in the cockpit. I mean, it's like any other person who's flying a plane. You have to show that you can do it and you're safe. And I'm sure that this is going to be very carefully monitored. So I hated to see that fear, but I get it. You know, we don't all agree just because we're in the diabetes community. It doesn't all mean we think the same way. But if your child wants to be a pilot, if they've expressed concern, right? Oh, I'm diagnosed with type 1. This is something I can't do. Tell them to go for it. I think this is fantastic. And it really does show that pushing, advocacy, doing what we need to do, we really can get this stuff done. Oh, I love it. All right, if you have a tell me something good story, it doesn't have to be breaking down barriers like this. It can be changing your own inset for the first time. It can be running a 5K. It can be whatever makes you happy, whatever you want to share. Drop me an email, Stacey@diabetes-connections.com. Post in the Facebook group. Tell me in person, however you want to reach me. Ping me on social media. Tell me something good. It is hard to believe, but we're getting to that time of year where things are going to start getting a little slower. How about that? I'm very excited. I don't know about you. I do have a lot of book stuff going on. I have a local event here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area in Davidson. It's actually my hometown bookstore. So I'm really thrilled. This Saturday, we're going to do a fundraiser for our JDRF walk team, Benny's Brigade, at Main Street Books in Davidson. I'm going to sign books and they want me to speak and read. I mean, this is going to be for my friends and neighbors. So I don't know if I'm actually going to read from the book. They may just want to schmooze, have a couple of cocktails in the bookstore and, buy some copies and make some donations, but that'll be fun. And then I don't think I'm going to be traveling in December. I have a couple of local events as well. I have a book event at the end of November in Charlotte, but it's not a diabetes event. It's more of an author event. And then January, February, March, April, May, and July. I think June I'm available. I have events every month next year through Friends for Life in July. Very excited to be speaking to lots of JDRF chapters. And the schedule is booking up. But I would love to come and talk to you. So if you are involved with your JDRF or a different diabetes organization, definitely go to diabetes-connections.com. There's a community page right there, and you can fill out a form. It sounds silly to fill out a form. It sounds kind of formal, but it makes it a lot easier. And, if it works out, I would love to come and talk about the book or just talk about other presentations that I do, tape a podcast episode, whatever works. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Okay, quick behind the scenes, though. So John Buchanan, he's been my editor for a long time now, but I found him because he edits another show, and he appears on a lot of shows that he edits. Maybe I'll have him on here one of these days. But it's called She Podcasts. And you might remember that I went to their conference about a month ago, and I always laugh saying John Buchanan now, which is his name, because one of the co-hosts on She Podcasts calls him John Jamingo. She gave him a radio name. And I think that's his name on Twitter now. So John, you can take all of that out if you want to. But I have to key my brain to say John Buchanan because I like thanking you. You work really hard on this show, and I really appreciate it. But you'll always be Buchanan and not Jamingo to me. Oh, my goodness. And thank you so much for listening and putting up with all my silly stuff. I really appreciate it. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.